They adopted this charter in 2017, so it is fairly new, but they've been working hard and consistently since 2017. Then there is an entrepreneurial program. It is for a program for women business owners or DBE organizations with the entrepreneurial program. While right now the women account for 50% of the working age population, the transportation agency is struggling to attract and retain women. And so, in keeping in line with that, WTS participated in the research report that came out as a Mineta Transportation Report. And that report was done for attracting and retaining women in the transportation industry. There was a research identified and to do some work on this, and WTS agreed to participate in that. And WTS Foundation, which supports the growth and the research and scholarship and students, provides assistance for the vision and inspiration of this research project. And another great initiative that WTS does is a international leadership program, which prepares women and also men, not just women. So while the organization's name has women transportation in it, but it's not just for women. It also encourages men to participate in being a member in the activities. And this leadership program is for both men and women to prepare them to lead the future of transportation. And they have two levels of leadership program, one at a mid-level and one at a executive level, and it's an annual program. As I mentioned, there are over 62 chapters throughout the world. Every state within the US have a chapter, but all the chapters are divided into 6 regions, and we fall under each of the regions. So the North Carolina chapter falls under Southeast region, and includes Virginia, West Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, and the entire this UNC blue, Tar Heel blue color region. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the local chapter here. So this is the org chart that depicts our leadership. So I am the president of the North Carolina Triangle chapter. Jessica Luther, she's the vice president, president-elect, and Tara Hoffert, who works with City of Raleigh. And I got this invite through her because she works with Chas. So she's our secretary, and Mary is the treasurer, and Jenny Fleming, she's the past president, and she has also been, she's also the Southeast Council chair for this term for WTS. And we have different committees. So if any of you on the call are interested, or you know any of your colleagues who are interested, you can join our organization and be active or involved in any of these committees. And you can reach out to me or anybody on the chapter. Some of the benefits of being a member is it provides an opportunity for education and training, and we do a lot of programs that like luncheons or breakfast, or just special programs just for providing education. A lot of professional development. We get PDH credits, AICP credits. As I mentioned, the leadership training program. WTS also has a knowledge lab where you can go and post a question, either be it technical, be it self-development, or anything related to running a chapter or anything like that. So, and you have access to a wide variety and a whole range of professionals within the WTS community to get your answers from. There is a mentoring and networking options. I personally have benefited a lot through WTS because I've made such great friends and helped a lot with the professional growth and also personal growth and just widening my network. For the advancement of women, there are scholarship opportunities, and I'm going to talk in detail about that in a minute. We also do annual awards, and then we have career centers where we have student chapters, and then we partner them with our sponsors if they are looking for an intern, so they get options for internships. And our members also serves as mentees, mentors to all of the students who are requiring guidance or support. I mentioned programs. Some of the programs we have had is luncheons. When we were able to meet in person, we would meet in person. Most of our luncheons are in person. We held one at the Union Station in downtown Raleigh, where we toured the station and then had lunch at a neighboring restaurant. But now, since March, we have been doing virtual lunches, and the topic of the lunches varies from technical to non-technical, from transit, multimodal, highway design, technology, anything you name it, we cover that topic. Supply chain management, freight analysis. Recently, we had a topic presentation last week on diversity and inclusion, which was mind-blowing presentation. And I mean, I learned so much about diversity and inclusion, things that I would not even think where there could be biases or some sort of unconscious biases. Then we also host a lot of Transportation U events, which is a program that is for middle school girls who are interested in pursuing a career in transportation. So we have a mentorship program for them, and we do an event once every quarter after the school year starts, and you need to sign up. The student have to sign up with the program, and then we have a background check on our volunteers, and then we used to have events in person, but again we are going virtual now. So the next Transportation U event is on November 19th, where we are going to be presenting on the transit. City of Raleigh, along with a consultant who's working on the BRT project, will be talking about the bus rapid transit project for Transportation U. But we have had events on safety. We have had events on water resources. So this picture on the left-hand side is where a consultant representative came and talked to girls about transportation safety, and then we gave them an exercise to plan for some safety level planning. So getting them trained for the profession. We also do some professional development breakfast, which is more on the work-life balance and to talk about self-development. And so like this one on the left-hand side is talking about the strategic look at your career, and the right one is more about 4 stages of learning. So the various different topics that we present at the breakfast series and invite speakers from the industry or outside the transportation industry. We also host specific events dedicated towards members. So just member only event. So one of the events we hosted was for the members came together and made some quilts which were donated to a charity. And then after that quilt making event, we went out to a pub trolley in downtown Raleigh and had some fun. So it's not just all serious, do a lot of fun activities too. And as you can see on this from this picture, we had male members also that are part of WTS organization. So they attended a couple of our events as well. And one of the main events that I enjoy the most is the Go Gala, which is our awards event where we acknowledge and award the transportation leaders and innovators in the industry. So there are various different types of awards. We give like a member of the year, women of the year, diversity award. We have innovative project award. We have the firm award, that the firm that is promoting women. So please check out our website to see different activities we do. David Howard, who is the Deputy Secretary of NCDOT, was awarded the Rosa Parks Diversity Award one year. VHB, the company I work for, got the Employer of the Year award in 2018. And the picture below is when we were again meeting in person, we used to host this event in the Alumni Center as NC State. So the bottom picture is from our event at the Alumni Center. And in addition to all of these events for promoting women in the transportation industry, we also work a lot with the charity organization. So in the month of December, we work with Dress for Success that helps women to prepare who have not been in the industry, in the professional or in the career for a long time, help them prepare to get back into the career. So help them with if they need outfits or if they need a resume tweaked out and written. So this organization helps them with that. So we do a charity drive where we ask members or non-members to donate their clothes that can be used for business purposes like interviews and for office and things like that. So we invite a volunteer for Dress for Success, and then they come to meet us at a lunch, and we donate our events. And one of the events we did for the members was actually visiting their facilities, so we understood what they do and how they do it. And one event that we are hosting end of this month for our members is a socially distanced yoga at Fletcher Park. So if you are interested in participating this, and if you're not a member, do become a member, then you can attend this event, and it will be a lot of fun. And we'll be following all the COVID protocols with masks and distance and uh, keeping things safe. A couple other upcoming events are, we are hosting a virtual speed networking event with the Charlotte chapter. So the North Carolina and the Charlotte chapter jointly are hosting a networking event on 28th of October. I mentioned the Transportation U on 19th, and we also in jointly with NCDOT host Southeast Rail Forum. We started that in 2016. It's a biannual event. So we have had two of them till now in 2016 and 2018. We were going to have one in 2020, which did not happen. So instead of that, we have moved on to virtual. So we do some forum segments where we do speak at the lunch, 1 hour lunch, a representative from a rail division, or uh, talk about the topic on rail planning or what's happening in the rail. So this is a Southeast Rail Forum is a joint event for 6 different states in the Southeast, not just North Carolina. So it includes Virginia, DC, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, and Georgia. So November 19th is an event where Julie White and Jason Ortner from NCDOT will be speaking. But we are still planning to host a full Southeast Rail Forum in 2021 in March, still working out the details, whether it will be virtual, a 2-day conference, or we are going to go in person. Looks like it'll be virtual, but we don't know the details yet. So be on a lookout for that. And that is not restricted to members. And I mentioned scholarship earlier. So we offer different scholarships at the graduate level, at the undergraduate level, at the high school level. And the scholarship call for scholarship is now open. So if you have anybody or you know anybody who is pursuing a career in transportation or is interested in pursuing a career in transportation, please ask them to submit their application. We have that information at our website. And the call for awards is also going to go out pretty soon. And the deadline for scholarship is November 13th. The other thing I wanted to note here and give a shout out to is our partners who support us. We have annual partnership program, and we have a really generous firms who support our program, without whom we would not be able to do all the events or things we do here. So these are all the firms that sponsor WTS and support WTS throughout the year. And our 2021 sponsorship, call for sponsorship, will be coming out pretty soon in November. So if you or your firm is interested in being a partner or a supporter of WTS, please check that out, and or email me and I can send you the detailed information. So I'm now going to talk about the probe data in transportation industry. But before that, I wanted to just give you a brief info on why I chose this topic and why that is relevant to the ASCE community. The ASCE in 2019 published a report called ASCE Future World Vision, Infrastructure Reimagined for 10 years out, 25 years out, 50 years out. What is our cities and towns going to look like? So they looked at these 6 pillars and did a detailed research on how each of these pillars tie in and what is important for the infrastructure for our cities and townships and places we live in. And that aligned perfectly with what VHB was doing during that time, because VHB was working on looking at these 4 different scenarios into how all of those 6 pillars will work. If one of these scenarios is how the future will look at, if the future is a resilient city or it's a dispersed settlement, or a progressive megacities, or if it is an unequal enclave, which is the poor gets poor and the richer gets richer type of a scenario. So then you looked at all of these 6 different pillars and see how each of those fit in each of these scenarios. And this, what work VHP did and what ASCE was doing, the work was done and combined as part of that report that was published in 2019. It's not a huge report, and I think it will be available should be available at ASCE website. I haven't checked that out because VHP was involved in it, so I was able to get my hands on it. So what the common finding for all of these 4 cities or 4 different type of settlements was civil engineers will incorporate new technological innovations and design infrastructure systems to enable new modes of living and transport, while they are adapting significant demographic changes and increasingly harsh environmental conditions and events. So, and the pervasiveness of technology and interconnection of previously distinct disciplines will create a greater need for civil engineers to understand the broader set of system dynamics impacting their area of focus. So, technology was running throughout each of these scenarios. So, that's why I'm like, okay, that is a perfect topic to talk about because that is the philosophy VHB believes in. We believe in the built environment that thrives on intelligent solutions and not solutions that are evolved, but by expanding, but by working it to be a future ready. And for VHP, technology does not mean just using big data, but also using other data sources, other services, and integrating them and running them all together. So your infrastructure planning, your design, or your site, or your survey, or your environmental planning, everything runs and technology connects everything together. That is the philosophy we work on. And what we do in our group that I'm part of, Applied Technology, is, and our approach to technology is to take raw data, transform that into a readable format, and add intelligence to it, to the data, and provide a solution that customizes to the market needs. So one of the solutions that was developed by VHB as a need of today was a tool called Intersect. It's the technology-driven innovative tool that leverages big data and traffic analysis. And the need for this tool was COVID, because for us transportation engineers, we need data, we need traffic counts. But because of COVID, people were not traveling. Everybody was commuting working from home. So nobody was commuting. So there was no traffic on the road, but the projects cannot stop. So we decided to use probe data to calculate the traffic on the road using 2019 data to determine what was the traffic in 2019. So when people are traveling back on the road, this is how the movement is going to be. So we used the probe data to come up with a turning movement count when you could, so that the projects could move forward. Our approach was we evaluated and compared various data sources, the data captured by each of them, the capture rate for each of them. And if you don't know what probe data is, it is the data that is collected by different agencies that are listed here, INRIX here, Verizon, using your cell phone pings while you're traveling, your Bluetooth devices, your location-based services, if you have activated them on your phone. So all of these, the pings that are sent out through these make up the probe data. And after reviewing all of these, we decided to work with INRIX as the vendor to move forward to use that data, because they were providing a trip data at a 1-minute interval for the entire year. And we developed a 4-step process to leverage the data, identify the control points so that we can get the movements, apply that to the model we have developed, and validate our model against the historical counts that were calculated in previous years, not in 2020, but 18 or 19 or even before that. And we came up with a turning movement, or even the roadway volume on the main road, And there are several benefits of using the probe data. The data collection, as I mentioned, is not affected by the absence of traffic, like right now. It's available 24/7, so you don't have to collect the data only for 13 hours or 16 hours or a 24-hour. You can use 1 week worth of data, you can use 1 year's worth of data, you can use 1 month worth of data, depending upon your need and how accurate you want your count to be. And as I said earlier, you don't have to wait for the schools to come back in session for the project to get started. If you're in the process of getting a project started, say in May, June, you can go ahead and get the project started and not have to wait for the summer break to be over. There are several advantages of using this. The other area where we have used probe data and big data is project prioritization. And we started with a project in Florida where we were it was a data driven, fully automated study. We used 20 performance measures, including safety and volume and transit and trucks and all that, to develop a model and a growth and a factor to prioritize the projects. But that was, we were, it was, since it was a big data, we didn't had a platform to ingest it. So VHB designed a data fusion center to ingest all of those big data that was coming in, because there were about billions of records that were coming in to host it. And our data fusion center is hosted in the cloud and also as a physical server. So whichever we need to use it, we have a redundancy into that, design that for a project in Florida. And it is very secure and safe, because the FDOT requirement was they didn't want the data to be accessible or hacked. So we had to provide a lot of security and safety behind the data. And then once we did the analysis of the data, we built out a data reporting dashboard which shows performance measures as a report that you can just generate your report for a corridor that you are looking at. If you're looking at this corridor, you can just generate a report and take it to your council or take it to your executive leadership and say that this project has this benefit and these are the metrics versus the other project. And this is also available live. So if you want to look at different projects during a meeting, you can just go on to that project and it will generate these reports live on the fly. The other project, as part of a continuation of the work we did for Florida, was a prioritization project we worked on for NCDOT. And as most of you are familiar, NCDOT goes through project prioritization every 2 years and allots over 20 billion in funding for a project at the statewide level, regional level, and a division level. And the purpose of a statewide level, 100% criteria for the selection at a statewide level is based on data. And for projects to address significant congestion and bottlenecks on projects at a statewide significance. The purpose of a regional project is to provide regional connectivity, and it is based on 70% based on selection. So we worked with NCDOT for looking at this criteria of data for congestion and connectivity for the statewide and regional level project using big data to improve the travel time reliability and look at the travel time reliability factor. And how we did that was we looked at the segments or the corridors to see how frequently they are in congestion, and identified the bottlenecks and how long the bottlenecks are and what is the impact of the bottleneck. So I'm just trying to explain one of these, and this recording will be available so you can watch it later and watch this graph later and understand it in detail. If the traffic is flowing from D to C to B to A, and T1, T2, T3, T4 are the timestamps. So D segment is in congestion throughout, C segment is in congestion throughout, but segment B gets congested in timestamp T2 and T3, but then by T4 it is not in congestion. And segment A is only congested in T3. So this is where the congestion is starting at D, and this is the impact of the congestion, how it is flowing and what all segment it is impacting. So there are these different types of bottleneck locations, which is, this is a moving bottleneck. This is a merging bottleneck where segment A and segment D were congested at the same time frame. but the segment B and C were not congested. But then by the end of T3 and T4, all the segments are in congested, which means two segments that were in congestion at a different time frame merged into one at a specific time, and they became congested together. And this is a diverging congestion where all the segments are in congestion, but you came at a diverging point and the congestion got diverted. And this is a traveling bottleneck, which is a moving bottleneck. So it traveled from A to B to C to D as time passed. So we looked at that. We looked at different criteria, probability of the bottleneck, focused mainly on US and NC roads, looking at 2018 data, focused on frequency of congestion, like the segment should be in congestion more than 40% of the time. And the congestion is identified when the segment is speed limit is 75% of the free flow speed. So if it is less than 75% of the free flow speed, then the segment was identified as to be in congestion. And we looked at various different aspects all day for the entire year. PM peak congestion, AM peak congestion, 16-hour congestion, or just all day congestion. So what we found was for an all day in the PM peak, the Charlotte and the Raleigh and the Greensboro and Winston-Salem, which are obvious, are a lot in congestion. And then there are some hotspots spread out throughout the state. But when you look at only Wednesday to Sunday, there is more congestion in these metro areas as expected because of the commute travel and also some weekend travel. And I'm showing a statewide level, but we'll dig deeper into the individual segment level and went into the details of each segment and the congestion at that segment. And then this is what this diagram is showing is the level of frequency of congestion and at a time frame what the segment is and what is the length of the segment and what time frame how it is congested. And then we calculated the impact of this congestion that was starting at segment TMC4 at time frame T, how far back that impact is going to be. We calculate the start of the congestion, head back of the congestion, and then calculated the impact of the congestion. So this graphic here shows the congestion is starting at this point and how far back it is going and how many segments it is impacting and what is the length of time that link is staying in congestion. Then we aggregated the time of day records and calculated the congestion. And I was talking about the head of the congestion. So this is showing the head of the congestion and the impact of that congestion. So this triangle here is the head of the congestion. This is where the congestion is starting. This is the impact of that congestion. The thickness shows the value that was calculated using a formula of the speed, the length, and the travel time it was impacting, and also how far back the impact of that congestion is, and other links that are merging into that congestion that have separate heads of congestion, but then they eventually merge into these congestion. So these are the kind of things we looked at for prioritization for NCDOT, and then took this back to Florida and did the same analysis for Florida from the previous study that I showed on Florida, which was on looking at the performance measures, but not looking at the congestion and the congestion head profile. So our lessons that we learned in North Carolina, we transferred it to Florida and used the probe data, but in Florida, we used the real-time probe data instead of previous year's data. And again, generated the same, looked at the congestion analysis from 7 to 9 a.m., 4 to 6 p.m. Congestion heads would work much longer because sometimes the congestion starts before the time frame of 7 a.m. starts. So we wanted to look at that. And the total records that we processed for the Florida study in real time were 3 billion records at a time, and develop these matrices. The other projects that we have been working on is on the transit. So we did a statewide commuter transit study where we used the streetlight data to understand the travel demand to various activity zones identified in an area. So this is a Wilmington area where we looked at activity zone. So this is a Market Street activity zone that was identified, and we looked at demand. So the lighter the color, the more the demand is from that block group, and the darker the blue, the less demand. But then overlaid that to the transit network, existing transit network, and also the congestion that we developed from the HERE data to see where there are gaps for transit surveys, where there is a need for providing transit surveys or need for travel market to provide services based on the congestion that we got from HERE data and also the demand that we are getting from streetlight data. And also plotted the isochrones showing how far the people are traveling to each of those activity zones to see the impact, like people are traveling 20 miles or 30 miles or only within 5 miles, and the magnitude of travel between each of those isochrones. The other cool project that I've been involved in working on, and this is related to COVID, for a transit agency in Northeast, we are using replica data to do transit planning for pandemic recovery. So we are looking at trends of travel pre-COVID, during COVID, and as the state is coming out of COVID or the travel restrictions have been eased out, what the trend is and how travel patterns are changing and what they need to do for their transit planning coming out of recovery, how much the demand would be, what buses they need to operate, what rail they need to operate, where they need to increase capacity or frequency, where the travel will not be there much, so they don't need that much service. So this graph here shows the green shows the weekly 7-day weekly trend starting from April all the way till July. And as you can see, May timeframe, the restrictions started easing up. So the trend of travel kept going up, but it is still way below where it was pre-COVID. And the weekend travel pattern has dropped towards the end when it started easing out, but the weekday follows like almost the same pattern as a week. We also looked at this data by the time of the day, and one interesting finding from the time of day analysis was pre-COVID, the AM peak was very high and the midday peak was not that high, but post-COVID or during COVID, the AM peak has dropped down because then people are not traveling that much for commute or work, but midday peak has stayed the same or have gone up because people are going out for the runs or the walks, or they are going out for lunches or just getting out during the lunch time frame to get a break. PM peak has stayed the same magnitude. It has not changed much. Other study that we leveraged big data was we for the stadium in Northeast, we looked at different retail aides were interested in seeing what people are doing for pre-game, post-game, where they are coming in from. If they're coming for tailgating, what are they doing? Are they staying there or they are going to the nearest retail shops and spending time at the malls? Or they are which shops they are going? So all that kind of data we were able to get from a big data provider, and this is a confidential project, so I can't name the provider, but to understand and study what they need to do and which entrances and where they need more development. This was mainly done for a private developer who wanted to bring in a large development in this area, but he wanted to know what would be the best site suited for this development. So taking this data forward, the next steps is again adding what I talked about, the prioritization, to add more performance measures like a travel time index or a travel time, and add machine learning and real-time analytics to the data to look at congestion. So planners or traffic operations can get real-time information about traffic operations on congestions, and also able to identify the congestion before it begins. So you can do some mitigation efforts to avoid that congestion, or during construction, if the construction is causing a congestion, you can get a real-time information and maybe ease the construction for a few hours so that the congestion is relieved, and then start the construction back. So these are a few of the things that can be done looking at the HERE data, but then the scope of using probe data is like enormous. Connected and autonomous vehicle, we have been working with a lot of Vision Zero programs. We are building dashboards and real-time information into them, providing real-time information for, as I said, for the construction and operations or prioritization. That's all I have today, and thank you again for giving me this opportunity. Jazz, are we taking questions now?
Yes, we are. And I want to thank you. That was very interesting. I learned a lot. Want to remind our members to feel free to post questions in the chat. I do have one as it relates to the football stadium that you had.
Uh-huh.
Did it take into account the time of the game? Because some games are
Yes.
on Monday or Thursday or Sunday evening or Sunday early in the afternoon.
Yes, it did take into account the time of the day and the day of the week and the year and the season and everything into consideration of how much volume people are coming and where they're coming from. And that is the biggest advantage of using probe data, because you can get that data at that level.
Yeah, everybody, feel free to chime in on the chat feature if you had any questions for Taruna. Yeah, it could be related to WTF or the probe data. I guess one question I wanted to ask is, I guess how widely used is the probe data just in general across the industry? Do you think a lot of folks are investing in this?
Yes, more and more folks are getting invested into it now, and especially now with COVID. On the transportation side, since as I said, you cannot get the new data, so people are leaning towards a lot of the states have actually changed their guidelines for data collection and have included digital data as a approved form of collecting data. So TRB did a research survey to all of their member DOTs to understand what they are doing and how COVID has impacted their data collection program. And a lot of DOTs mentioned that they have changed their guidelines on what will be an approved method of data collection. And from our work, we know that Mass DOT and New York State DOT have made those changes, and they have accepted the Intersect tool as one of the tool for turning movement counts and mainline counts.